Polish Legion has recruited 1,300 Ukrainians to fight for Ukraine, while Ukraine is getting the new Boxer IFV from Germany. But we'll talk about this as well as about everything that has happened along the front lines and behind them in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. The oil depot in Engels is still burning, according to the reports. When we take a source from the Russian side, this is the Cheka OGPU channel that has good sources in the Russian intelligence areas. They are saying that 120,000 cubic meters of fuel have been destroyed, 3 tanks in them, and 6 further tanks have been damaged. The Russians are continuing to strike almost daily, or basically daily, with a high 2-digit number of drones. I usually don't talk about it because it's a daily occurrence and I don't want to waste our time. I just remind you now and then that this is still ongoing. Last week, for instance, according to the Ukrainian President Zelensky, the Russians had used 700 gliding bombs as well as 600 attack drones. The Russians have also used 1,700 attack drones in December. That's a lower number than in November before, where 2,300 had been used, the first time in the war that this number has been reduced. We switch to the developments along the front line, and here we start in Kursk. Here the Russians have crossed the border in the south of, or let's say in the west of the fighting area, south of the former Glushkovo pocket. This is in this region here. The Russians have crossed over. Likely, obviously, they'll plan to flank the Ukrainians in this direction. As we can see, the geolocation shows them barely behind the border. They have been attacked with drones in this regard, so how far they have progressed is unclear, but it shows that the Russians are crossing over there. But that was it. I do not see any other change in the territory over the last 2 days from in the territorial control in Kursk over the past 2 days. We switch to Kharkiv, same here, no change that I can confirm in territory. So we switch to the Eastern Front, and here we have the Russians that are southwest of Sinkivka. We have a fresh geolocation of a Russian soldier being attacked here. This is on the map, this is roughly here. This does not indicate that they managed to gain control over the area. It just shows that they're operating there in an offensive capacity. Further south, the Russians have been attacking west of Makivka, and they gained some ground down here. We have a geolocation of this as well. You can see the forest here directly west of Makivka, and they are on the western tip, so they have reached up to this point an advance of 1.5 kilometers here west of Makivka. That was it north of the Siversky Donetsk. We switch to the area south of it. Siversk, obviously fighting is being reported, but I do not see any change in territory. The biggest change here is from Chasiv Yar. There the Russians managed to bypass the plant here that held them back most of the time, and they have taken by now the Pivnichny quarter of the city and have advanced further west. The whole quarter has fallen to the Russians. They're only roughly 700 meters away from the western end of Chasiv Yar, so a big blow to the Ukrainian positions inside of the town. The whole northeast of Chasiv Yar has been lost over the last 2 days. Further south, I do not see any change in territory. We switch to Toretsk. Here the fighting is obviously ongoing. We have a fresh geolocation in the outermost northwest of the town. There is probably some Ukrainian presence still left in Toretsk, but it's getting increasingly smaller, the areas where the Ukrainians might still be. Toretsk might not have fallen yet, but it's clearly going in this direction. The progress of the Russians is undeniably, they are advancing and continue to advance in Toretsk. At this moment, I'm not able to say whether the Ukrainians control 5 or 20%, whereas it's probably more likely in the 5% direction, but the direction it's going right now is clear. It should not be a surprise if Toretsk has fallen within the next 7 to 10 days. Further west, In the direction of Pokrovsk, we have news as well. The Russians managed to advance further from further northwest of Vostvishenka. Here in this direction, they gained the positions here, and now they are only a mere 1.5 kilometers away from the T0504. That's the road, the yellow road here on the map between Pokrovsk over Mirnograd up to Konstantinivka and obviously Bakhmut. Here, this is an important line of communication along the front line in the west-east direction. And here the Russians are now have closed in to 1.5 kilometers of this road. The Russians have also advanced in the west of Pokrovsk. Here they gained roughly this area here. They have now reached the forested areas along the railroad that is going west of Pokrovsk, and they have reached the T0406, the road that was going west of Pokrovsk in this direction, connecting it with Udachne and further west. This road is now cut. According to what I see, the Ukrainians have lost their positions, and the Russians are continue to advance in the west of Pokrovsk and are slowly reaching a northern area, a northern advance that is closing in on equal to the southern outskirts of the city. If I was able to transfer that correctly, I mean that they are in the process of bypassing Pokrovsk to shorten it, or they clearly show plans to bypass it. If they had the same advance northwards towards Pokrovsk itself, they would be standing in front of the first houses of Pokrovsk by now, when we regard the advance west of the city. This is having an effect. The mine of Pokrovsk, which is extremely important for Ukraine's steel industry, that is obviously needed for defense, but also for the economy. For this, Pokrovsk was the most important coal mine, and now the coal mine has been shut down. Over the last 2 days, the Ukrainians said that they stopped producing mine. It was still in operation still a week ago, while the city itself was already shelled. According to reports several months ago, there was only 1/3 of the staff still operating there, but it was still operating, it was still producing coal. Now the Ukrainians have stopped the production as the front is getting ever closer to Pokrovsk itself. Further south in the direction of Kurakhove, in the Kurakhove area, the Russians have reached the outskirts of Dachne. No, we are too fast, I'm sorry. Novovasilivka has also been taken. I forgot about that completely. We have a geolocation about this as well. This is here. This is west of Pokrovsk. Before I switched to Kurakhove too fast. Novovasilivka is this here. The Ukrainians have been pushed back to the outskirts of Uspenivka, so an additional territorial gain here in this direction as well. Further south in Kurakhove, the Russians have reached, getting closer and closer to Dachne. Here we have a geolocation of them in the tree line and close to the first houses and the cemetery of Dachne. They are already south of the dacha area of Dachne itself, getting ever closer on the map. This is at this point here. And they have also taken the town of Yatarne to the south of it. This is this town here. We have a geolocation of this as well. They are in the center of the town, and according to reports, they have already crossed it through to the north. So this would mean that the front line is more or less like this here, and it has reached roughly this point here. So they're getting further and further to the west. They're advancing further to the west, and the pocket here, the Ukrainian pocket, is in the process of collapsing. Further west, I do not see any change. There are developments here at the Oblast border. North of Velika Novosilka, we have visual evidence of the Russians having reached the Mokry Yali River. I have a fresh geolocation of this, but I'm not sure whether this is new. The connection towards Novi Komar was already cut a couple of weeks ago. Now we have the Russians here. Obviously, though, this would mean, should the Russians be able to cross the Mokry Yali River here, then they could encircle and completely envelop Velika Novosilka. So that's an additional danger here. Whether they manage to gain a foothold here is unclear, though. West of it, I do not see any change in territory. Overall, though, The first video evidence of talking to the North Korean soldiers fighting for the Russians was taken. It sounds to me like it's clearly Korean language from what I hear. I don't speak it though, but the South Koreans themselves have confirmed that it's North Korean soldiers that have been captured, and we have Russian mill bloggers confirming that North Koreans have been taken. One of them, interestingly enough, said that he didn't even know he was going to war. He was expecting to go to some training. So apparently the North Korean soldiers have not been informed what is awaiting them. In troop generations, we have some news. It seems like the Russians have received some shorat from the North Koreans. Here, in a video, a drone is hitting an air defense system, and this was identified to be likely this North Korean type. This should not be too much of a surprise. According to the reports with the cooperation agreement with Iran will likely receive S-300 or S-400 air defense and will return air defense in turn to the Russians. The reason for that is simple. Russia's main threat outside of the direct border, the direct area behind the border where Storm Shadow and ATACMS might be a threat. Further inland, the threat is not from high-flying objects. The threat is from low-flying objects, from drones that can strike targets, and there the Russians need short-range air defense, not a strategic system. So this is likely that Russia has made some kind of deal with North Korea to buy North Korean short-range air defense systems, maybe in return for S-300, S-400. We'll have to see how it will turn out there. But with the Iranians, that deal was already spoken about. So this is not too much of a surprise that Russia is also receiving shorat from the North Koreans itself. For the Ukrainians, they are also receiving aid. Kiev Independent is reporting that 1,300 Ukrainians have signed up for the Polish Legion, including women among them, that will be used in drone and medical medical roles. The Polish Legion is being formed by Poland with Ukrainian citizens that are outside of Ukraine. Ukraine has mobilization, and thus if a Ukrainian man is returning to Ukraine, he will not allow to leave the country anymore unless he has been receiving some kind of waiver, and he's being threatened with mobilization. So a lot of the Ukrainian citizens have not returned to Ukraine. At the same time, the argument was that a lot of them might want to fight for Ukraine but are afraid that they are not going to be trained properly, that equipment might be lacking. So the logical idea was from the Polish side, why don't we set up a unit that we will train, that we will properly train, that we will help equip and try to find Ukrainians willing to fight. And there, according to the reports, 1,300 have signed up. So far away from a brigade, but at least roughly 1.5 battalions of Ukrainians have signed up to fight for Ukraine in the future after receiving training from the Polish side. In international support, we have news that the first RCH-155 was handed over to Ukraine today. That was already announced in the last situation report, and the German outlet Hartpunkt is publishing that in this event, when Ukraine received the first RCH-155, it was also said that Ukraine will receive RCT-30. That's a Boxer with a 30mm autocannon turret on top. To which number at which date is unknown. So far, it wasn't even known that Ukraine will receive the Boxer, but apparently they do, and they will receive an unknown number of Boxers in the future. But that was already it from me for today. Somewhat shorter because not that much has happened that was worth the reporting. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment what you think about the current developments and the Polish Legion, for instance, or whether you think that the Boxer and just another IFV is a good idea. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description, but that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.